If at any point you start to feel uncomfortable, pause the video, check in with yourself, and have a look at the description bar for some help and resources. 3 myths about rape and sexual assault that this video seeks to challenge. Only women can be subjected to sexual violence. A majority of rapes are carried out by evil strangers. Rape only consists of vaginal penetration by a penis. These myths that are so ingrained into our imaginations about sexual violence can actually obscure the true realities of it, which is often a lot more complicated and nuanced. What does sexual violence and abuse look like today in real life with real young people? I know it sounds a bit weird, but bear with me. We have the internet and technology, intricate social networks. The meanings that are attached to our sex lives are completely different from previous generations. We have different and varied social cues and expectations. To answer that question, it's complicated. I personally don't think that we as a generation see how our society reproduces the idea of sexual violence as a norm. Okay, I've got a question for you. What do terms friend zoned, boys will be boys, and playing hard to get all have in common? Don't worry, I'll wait. The phrase rape culture springs to mind. Rape culture! I know those of you who disidentify with feminism of any sort probably recoils at the term, oh, rape culture, and dissolves into a bubbly sulfuric acid, but just hear me out, okay? I want this video to highlight the ways in which we are hurting ourselves and the others around us without even realizing it. If you hear the words rape and culture, any rational being would assume that I'm talking about a culture of rape, which is not the entirety of it. It's not always that blatant. Rape culture, or the way in which I understand it, is the way in which our culture low-key promotes the idea of sexual assault and sexual violence against women as inevitable. It will happen. It's just a matter of when. Men always pursue women, and women always assume a passive victim role. Through social attitudes, assumptions, and sayings, etc., rape culture tells women not to get raped, and if you do, it's your fault. Instead of telling men, don't rape. And if you do, we will find you and fuck you up. Okay, I added the last bit, but you get my drift. How much did you drink? What were you wearing? Were you leading him on? Why were you alone? Why didn't you resist? Sound familiar? Sounds like victim blaming to me. Question: why do we often look to the rapist's future and the victim's past to justify rape and act as some sort of evidence of character? Even in a court of law, which sounds ridiculous. Poorer women, queer bodies, and women of color are often seen as inherently sexual and often are denied the privilege of being seen to be innocent or pure. Don't you think it's crazy how some people are seen as unrapeable? Sexual assault and violence operates in our everyday lives through the things that we say, the way in which we interact with each other. The certain material that gets circulated online is not that easy to identify, especially if we've got a very limited view of what sexual assault is. Which leads me back to the myths about rape. Many of us don't even recognize sexual violence. It can be, and very often is, by people we know. People who are well respected. Ordinary men, women, queer, straight, cis, trans, in the daytime, at your grandmother's house, at a family barbecue. And this can affect victims' willingness to report it for fear of being disregarded, slut-shamed, and even not believed. You may not know this, but many people don't actually resist this kind of violence as a self-preservation strategy to minimize trauma. And likewise, sexual assault can be anything from inappropriate touching, harassing text messages, and even revenge porn. Bet you didn't know that. The term friend zone reproduces the idea that nice guys finish last, and if a guy treats a girl like shit, then he's more likely to get sex. I wonder who could have started a thing like that. We need new metaphors for sex. Preferably ones that don't relate to baseball. Score! Second base! Home run! Implies that men and women are on different teams, playing against each other, the men attacking and the women defending. No sign of consent involved. Consent is the only distinguishing factor between pleasurable sex and coerced, unwanted sexual assault and or rape. Is that deep right there. Sometimes it's more about the ability to say no than saying yes. I appreciate that it isn't always black and white, especially for young people. There's often an imperative or a pressure for young people to appear sexually desirable or active, online and in real life, that may put us in risk of being coerced. For example, the hooking up culture on campuses makes it seem like everybody's doing it, and this in itself creates pressure and reproduces the norm. Unfortunately, consent is often inferred by other non-verbal factors such as dress sense, alcohol consumption, reputation, pictures online. Yes should only ever mean yes. Not no means yes, not maybe means yes, or she's drunk a lot tonight means yes. Sexual violence of any sort is such a horrible and traumatic thing, and I know that it can not be a thing if we change our attitudes towards it. Be vocal with your partner, communicate, check in with yourself. Does this feel right? Because while coercion isn't exactly rape, it's unwanted sex. Stopping rape should be a community effort, not just the responsibility of women and girls. Slut shaming shouldn't even be a thing. Give survivors the support that they need. Be critical towards sayings and actions and assumptions that encourage backward views towards sexual violence. Check yourself. Fuck double standards. If we're not aware, then we can't punish and reprimand those who should be held accountable, and we cannot offer support and help to those who need it.